Hello everyone, this is Devin Navarez, and today I am going to be talking about an excerpt from the audiobook of Hillary Clinton's new memoir, What Happened. Now, the book basically details Hillary's experience as the Democratic Party's nominee for President of the United States in the 2016 election. The book was authored by Clinton herself and will be released to the public on September 12th, 2017, which, oddly enough, happens to be the day after the anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, I might add, but that's a story for another day. A few days ago on Fox News, an excerpt from the audiobook of What Happened was reported featuring Hillary Clinton herself, talking about how uncomfortable and creeped out she felt as Donald Trump literally breathed down her neck as she was speaking to a live audience during the second presidential debate, which took place on October 9th, 2016, just a month and a day before the election itself on November 8th, 2016. We all know how that turned out. Take a listen to the excerpt for yourself.
He followed me closely, staring at me, making faces. It was incredibly uncomfortable. He was literally breathing down my neck. My skin crawled. Do you stay calm, or do you turn, look him in the eye, and say loudly and clearly, "Back up, you creep. Get away from me."
Now, we all saw when Donald Trump apparently stalked Hillary during the debate, walking in circles around the podium and pacing as it was Hillary's turn to talk to the audience. But Hillary Clinton implies that this made her feel so uncomfortable that she wanted to turn around and shout,
"Back up, you creep. Get away from me."
There are some people out there who would swear on their immortal soul that Donald Trump did this on purpose, towering over Clinton as a tactic to scare her, make her nervous during the debate, and establish his role as the male-dominating patriarch of America. However, there is a truth about this that most, if not very few, people fail to realize. Donald Trump never invaded Hillary Clinton's space. In fact, he never went anywhere near her during the debate. It was Hillary Clinton who invaded Donald Trump's territory. Seriously, people, you all have eyes, use them. During the entire debate, Donald Trump stood exactly where he was supposed to, on his side. And whenever it wasn't his turn to speak, he paced around a little. I mean, who doesn't do that? Watch this excerpt from the second presidential debate and tell me it actually wasn't Hillary Clinton who invaded Donald Trump's space on the platform.
You can start. No, go ahead, Donald.
No, I'm a gentleman, Hillary. Go ahead.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think Donald was about to say he's going to solve it by repealing it and getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I'm going to fix it because I agree with you. Premiums have gotten too high, co-pays, deductibles, prescription drug costs. And I've laid out a series of actions that we can take to try to get those costs down. But here's what I don't want people to forget when we're talking about reining in the costs, which has to be the highest priority of the next president. When the Affordable Care Act passed, it wasn't just that 20 million people got insurance who didn't have it before, but that in and of itself was a good thing. I meet these people all the time.
I understand Hillary was only trying to answer the question of an audience member, but she could have stayed by her podium. Whenever Donald Trump answered a question, he never left his podium. He didn't walk around the room pretending like he owned the place, unlike a certain former Secretary of State we know. Anyone with a brain knows that if you want to answer a question, you don't have to stand 2 inches away from the person you're talking to. And yes, Donald Trump is staring at Hillary rather intently during this excerpt, but think about this. He's running for President of the United States. He's debating his opponent in front of millions of people on television. He needs to listen carefully to every opposing word she says, and that requires careful audible and visual attention. And honestly, if Hillary was that concerned about her comfort during the debate, why in the world is she going anywhere near Donald Trump? Of course he's breathing down her neck, because she placed her stout little legs right in front of him. So if anything, it was Donald Trump who was trying to keep his distance from Hillary. It was probably Donald Trump who was thinking,
"Back up, you creep. Get away from me."
Donald Trump was standing exactly where he was supposed to during the entire debate, on his side. Hillary Clinton, however, took the liberty of walking wherever she pleased during the debate. But that's okay, Hillary. You're a strong, independent woman who can do whatever she wants regardless of what people have to say about it. You don't have to follow the rules, like stay on your side of the platform. And because Donald Trump is a mean, perverted, scary, hairy man, he's not allowed to so much as look at you. He doesn't deserve to have the same independent rights as you do, like stand and walk around his podium. So yes, Hillary, how dare Donald Trump stand behind you while you walk right in front of him? How dare he place his attention on you while you're the only person speaking in the room? How dare he pace around while he waits for his turn to speak? How misogynistic, how bigoted, how racist, how horrible, how
Evil!
Evil?
Evil?
Also, if Hillary Clinton was as uncomfortable as she claims to be, the tone and emotion, or lack of emotion in her voice suggests otherwise. If you listen carefully, there isn't really any emotion or distress in her voice at all, as she describes being stalked by Donald Trump. She sounds less like a woman in distress and more like a robot reciting instructions to her master. Or like she's communicating through Stephen Hawking's speech-generating device.
Back away, you creep. Get away from me.
Some people claim Trump was stalking Hillary during the debate. But how can this be when Donald Trump never left his side of the platform? If he were really trying to stalk her, then he would have crossed over to her side, as NBC's Saturday Night Live would have you believe. So they, as in the news networks and talk show hosts like CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, Jimmy Kimmel, or Stephen Colbert, or Samantha Bee, or this guy, try to tell you that Trump's presidency is illegitimate, that he colluded with the Russian government to win the 2016 presidential election, despite absolutely zero evidence to prove so. Make no mistake, these accusations are used on purpose to cloud the real truth, that the news networks, the talk show hosts, and even your favorite celebrities are all in collusion with the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton Foundation to destroy the image of the legitimate President of the United States of America, Donald John Trump. It's no secret that the mainstream media and the Clinton campaign have been working together to delegitimize the president. Open your eyes, people. The media and the Democrats do not care about whether or not Trump's presidency will harm and potentially destroy America as we know it. About you. The only reason why they are trying so hard to demonize President Trump is because they lost the White House in 2016. They no longer have power over you, the American people. We, the people, no longer have to put up with the false and sinful legislations of the liberal and democratic agenda, and they hate that. The Democrats hate Donald Trump because he stands for something that they do not: freedom to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The liberals and the Democrats have been trying for years to convince you, the American people, and the rest of the world that you will never be happy, that you will never have freedom unless they're in power. And believe me.
Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Hey, believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me. Believe me.
They don't want some of the power. They want all of it. They try to push the narrative that not only America, but the rest of the world is doomed if the people in power are those who believe and stand for the rights that God Himself bestowed upon us.
Far too many women are still denied critical access to reproductive health care and safe childbirth. All the laws we've passed don't count for much if they're not enforced. Rights have to exist in practice, not just on paper. Laws have to be backed up with resources and political will, and deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed.
We are living in a volatile political environment. You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you can put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
The Democrats hate God. Therefore, when Donald Trump tweets something like, "In America, we don't worship government, we worship God," the Democrats become upset because they want to be God. They want to have the final say in everything.
Yeah. Doesn't the Bible say that we're all made in the image of God? So if you're telling people that they're all bad, then isn't that contradicting yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question, but no. Okay? Because we're not the creator, we're the creation.
Okay.
We're human beings, he's made us a lot like him, but we're fallen. We've rebelled against him, and the Bible actually says we're haters of God.
Oh, interesting.
We hate him.
Okay.
Here's why. Okay, how many times how many times have you thanked God for air?
Never.
Okay, it's his air. You've been stealing gulp after gulp of air.
Oh, okay. Okay, I have a question.
We hate God by ourselves.
Oh.
We're rebels against God.
Okay.
We live the way we want. We wake up. We don't do what we're told. We don't thank him. We don't praise him. We don't read his word. We don't submit to him. We eat our meals without ever saying thanks. We don't go and witness to people. We lie. We lust. Most people look at pornography in this country. It's all a way of going, hate you, God. Hate you. I'm the God of my life. We're haters of God.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I just got back from Nepal, and in Nepal, people believe in Hinduism and Buddhism mainly, and it's deeply rooted in that. And how can you tell me that those people in Nepal are going to have the same view of God as you are, and there's only one way, when their view of God is going to be completely pluralistic, because they grow up in a culture, and my view of God is so different from your view of God. So how do you sit here and tell people that your truth is their truth? Like, I don't understand that. Because you possess the truth and you don't pursue it at all. So you're completely blinded to other ways of worship.
Jesus said this. Are you a Christian?
Am I a Christian?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. Here's what Jesus said. Jesus claimed to be God. All right? Start right there. And he said, there is no other God. None. They're all idols made of wood. These people in India who carve up their little wooden statue, here's how it works. They take a piece of wood like this telephone pole.
I don't want you to talk about them like that.
Hold on. They take a piece of wood, and the God that they just carved out can't make its way to the altar, so they have to carry their God and put it on the altar, and they got to nail it down to make sure it doesn't wobble in the wind. And then they take the rest of the wood that they carved their God from, and they use it to make a sandwich in the fireplace.
Okay.
It's
but listen.
Idol, says the God of the Bible. No,
but wasn't the Bible made by human hands too?
That's a different subject.
And you worship that.
That's a different subject. You said these gods that they have, how can you say they're wrong? Because the God of the Bible says they're wrong. And they're worshiping a false idol. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, only one truth, Jesus, and the life. But
Jesus lived his life pursuing truth.
Now, he is truth. He didn't pursue it. He's the standard of truth. He doesn't submit to truth. He is the truth. And the way and the life. Now, either he is right, all right, and everybody else is wrong, or they're wrong, and he was a nut. Because nobody would proclaim that if they were sane.
Okay.
Or he's God.
Okay, and I've heard this all my life. I grew up in the church. I went to retreats and stuff like that. I've heard that. Liar, lunatic, Lord, I've heard it.
Yeah, I don't usually use that, but that's
okay, but at the same time, when you go and you actually talk to other people and listen to them.
So they're wrong. So what?
Okay, see ya.
Wow. The biggest sin, you think I just said a dirty word saying that somebody's wrong. Do you think I'm wrong? Yeah. Yay. So am I a bad guy for saying you're wrong? I am? That's not fair. You can say I'm wrong, but I can't say you're wrong. Now, welcome to the postmodern world.
They don't want you to worship God. They want you to believe that there is no God, that there is no higher power above us, that the people who have true power is them, the government. Simply put, they want you to worship them. Therefore, they'll do whatever it takes to convince the world that Donald Trump is evil and you should hate him. The manipulation and social engineering coming from the media has become so bad that if Trump so much as walks a certain way, he's criticized harshly for it.
A case of chivalry or a phobia? A theory about why President Trump grabbed the British Prime Minister's hand, now getting the thumbs down. CNN's Jeannie Moos explains all this.
Imagine if you grabbed the Pope's hand.
Whether it be not shaking the German Chancellor's hand or clutching the hand of Britain's Prime Minister, President Trump's hands seem to end up in headlines. For instance, the BBC headline, "Donald Trump is scared of stairs?" Scare case chortled one British paper back when President Trump took Prime Minister May's hand as they navigated a ramp at the White House. Seems British government sources told the British press that President Trump held May's hand because he has bathmophobia, a fear of ramps and stairs. A fear the household pets. That's President Bush nudging Barney. The Trump stairs jokes were ramped up.
Finally, an explanation for all those escalators. Escalators are great. They're really, really amazing. And I've been told I look really great on them.
Ever since first hearing about the phobia rumor, I've become slightly obsessed with watching President Trump watch his step. Really watching his step coming down the stairs of the Capitol, even while climbing just a couple of steps at the White House. Coming off his plane, eyes on his feet, clutching the railing. He once noted how President Obama used to jog down the stairs. Hopping and bobbing all the way is so inelegant and unpresidential. Do not fall. President Obama caught himself, while Gerald Ford and Hillary didn't. When asked if the president has fear of stairs, a White House spokesperson said, "No offense, but this is an absurd question." And now Britain's Prime Minister has told Vogue, "I think he was actually being a gentleman. We were about to walk down a ramp, and he said it might be a bit awkward." The Prime Minister throws cold water on the bathmophobia theory. Guess that means we can cancel that ban on steps.
All new houses will have to be single-story. No stairs.
Jeannie Moos, CNN, New York.
They're really great.
Stairophobia. I had never heard of it, but you can make a case for it.
Yeah, I bet you it's not even called that. All the phobias have those weird names, but I think it's the least of his concerns.
Really?
Yeah.
You agree with the White House saying this is an absurd question?
No, I think no question is absurd, but I think that with everything else he's facing, a little bit of caution is a good thing.
Interesting, Chris. All right, go out on a limb with that one. All right, wow, that's important. The hand pat was also interesting.
They will call Trump out on anything they can find, but whenever Hillary's in trouble, you'll never hear them speak of it. Emails. The Democrats work with the mentality that the American people can be easily manipulated through their deceptive tactics, such as disguising their manipulative acts as good. They prize themselves as the standard of good, and if you don't agree with anything that they believe, you are branded as a racist, as a bigot, as a
Sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic.
The list just goes on and on and on, people. This is why they chose Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee during the 2016 presidential election. This was their mindset. Let's put Hillary in office. Americans will never suspect what we're up to if we put this kind, soft, and well-dressed lady in the Oval Office. They'll never believe that this harmless woman would ever do anything to hurt the interests of this great nation. In the meantime, let's make Donald Trump look like the villain. He certainly looks the part. He's tall, he's white, he says whatever's on his mind, and we've already convinced half the country that white people are the evil plaguing this nation. How easy will it be to make people think that he's this generation's Adolf Hitler? He fits the role perfectly. The American people will never notice. Yes, they actually believe you are that stupid. But you Americans are not stupid. In fact, you're more intelligent than most people give you credit for. Or at least, than these people give you credit for. And you proved this when you voted for Donald John Trump 10 months ago, with no help from Russia, of course. There is no evil that is more deceptive than when it is disguised as good. Remember, it wasn't the evil side that drove Eve to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It was the good side. Remember that scripture? In the last days, people will call evil good and good evil. Eve saw the tree of knowledge of good and evil and saw that it was good. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. You get the picture. At least, I hope you do. Hillary Clinton is the personification of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Sure, she looks nice. She looks harmless. She looks like she'd never hurt a fly. But remove all of that and you'll find a predator that is ready to rip her prey to shreds the minute it steps in her way. We can expect What Happened to merely be 512 pages of Hillary yet again blaming others for her historic, yes, her historic loss. Admit it, Hillary Clinton losing the 2016 election is indeed the biggest loss in American history. Think about it. She had almost every mainstream media outlet, almost every celebrity, the majority of these people on her side, and she's still lost. It was utter hubris of the left to think that they had the minds of the American people in their control. And when they lost control, the reality hit them like a brick in the skull.
I'm honored to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Adjust the microphone as you're told, man. Hands on the lectern.
However, they refuse to accept this fact, and they still refuse. Yet this is another example of the progressive left's complete detachment from reality. They actually believe that their opposition of President Trump is an act of heroism. They are fighting tyranny, they are fighting hate, and soon they will make history, and future generations will thank them and praise them for their bravery and dedication to, making America great again by getting Donald Trump out of the White House, or maybe even getting him out of the world. The Democrats can't handle that their power is gone, and they know very well that it's because the American people got their heads screwed back on in the right place at the right time. However, they're far too proud to admit it. So they'll fabricate stories like Russian influence in the presidential election. This is exactly what Hillary Clinton does. She'll go to any lengths to blame anyone other than herself for her loss.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask? I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. If the election had been on October 27th, I'd be your president. Did I make mistakes? Oh my gosh, yes, you'll read my confession and my request for absolution. But the reason why I believe we lost were the intervening events in the last 10 days. And I think you can see I was leading in the early vote. I had a very strong, and not just our polling and data analysis, but a very strong assessment going on across the country. The Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided. And here's
guided by Americans.
Guided by Americans and guided by people who had polling and data information. Now, let me just finish because this is the second and third step. So we know that they did that. We understand it. Best example, so within 1 hour of the Access Hollywood tapes being leaked, within 1 hour, the Russians, let's say WikiLeaks, same thing, dumped the John Podesta emails. Now, if you've ever read the John Podesta emails, they are anodyne to boredom. But they...
Yeah, we had him here once.
Yeah, but they were, forgive him for what he said about you, yeah. So they were run-of-the-mill emails, especially run-of-the-mill for a campaign. Should we do this? What should she say? I don't, the stuff that is so common, basic. Within 1 hour, they dumped them, and then they began to weaponize them. And they began to have some of their allies within the internet world, like InfoWars, take out pieces and begin to say the most outrageous, outlandish, absurd lies you can imagine. I inherit nothing from the Democratic Party.
What do you mean nothing?
I mean, it was bankrupt. It was on the verge of insolvency. Its data was mediocre to poor, non-existent, wrong. I had to inject money into it.
This is the DNC.
The DNC to keep it going. I never said I was a perfect candidate, and I certainly have never said I ran perfect campaigns, but I don't know who is or did. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it sort of bleeds over into misogyny. Mm-hmm. And let's just be honest, you know, people who have a set of expectations about who should be president and what a president looks like, you know, they're going to be much more skeptical and critical of somebody who doesn't look like and talk like and sound like everybody else who's been president. And, you know, President Obama broke that, you know, that racial barrier. But, you know, he's a very attractive, good-looking man with lots of...
Well, he's likable enough.
He's likable enough, absolutely. More than. I also think I was the victim of a very broad assumption I was going to win. It doesn't matter what you do to her.
That you were going to win.
Yeah, just, you know, everybody.
You're talking about Nate Silver and the Times.
And well,
she has an 88%.
Yeah.
She has an 89%.
Yeah,
chance.
and you know, I never believed that. I always thought it was going to be a close election because our elections are always close. And you know, if you have an R next to your name or a D next to your name, you end up often falling in line to vote for your candidate. So I think a lot of people, we'll get to that after the election. You know, we're not going to worry about it right now. And that turned out to be a terrible mistake.
Mm-hmm. So a victim of that they thought you were going to win. So what's the difference?
Well, I think that was part of it.
What about a financial element, that they made money from this?
Oh, I think, well, look, that you know, the networks made more money than they've made in years. And we've got lots of network executives saying things like, you know, he may not be good for the country, but he's good for business. Right. Look, I take responsibility for every decision I made, but that's not why I lost.
Donald Trump didn't win the presidency because of Russia. He won because the American people saw right through Hillary Clinton's facade and found out the secret ingredient in her cauldron brewing with dirty and pungent corruption. So go ahead, buy this book. In fact, I encourage you to go buy and read this book. It is your God-given American right to go and buy and read this book. But just remember, it was designed to mislead you. Think about this. From what we've seen from this excerpt, it is clear that this memoir only details how Hillary Clinton felt during the 2016 presidential campaign and election. So the book might as well be titled, What I Think Happened, or What I Feel Happened, because it's all about how we feel, right, liberals? After all, we will only be reading about how Clinton felt about what happened. We won't necessarily be reading about what actually happened. Seriously, Hillary, don't try to mislead people with the assumption that what you've written is 100% fact. At least have the decency to put a question mark at the end of your title. However, it's your choice to whether or not you will change the title. You don't necessarily have to. I'm just saying, don't think the American people are going to fall for it. Some of us will, but most of us won't. What Happened by Hillary Rodham Clinton will be released in bookstores on September 12th of this year. Thank you all for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe if you're new for more videos, and follow me on Twitter at PainAnthropy. And remember, ladies, next time you find a dirty, hairy man stalking you from behind, don't be afraid to turn around and shout,
"Back up, you creep. Get away from me."